Hello and welcome back to Mr. Hall's Read Alouds. This is part 6 of Dinkin Dings and the Curse of Clawfingers. Let's begin. The Rise of Clawfingers. Terror at 9.8.6.2 kiloscares and rising. Dinkin and the frightening things tiptoed down the stairs and into the hall, then crept into the kitchen, where Dinkin found a spoon for digging in the garden. No time to invent the Earth Turf 2000. This will have to do, said Dinkin, examining the spoon. Right, everyone stay close behind me. And no screaming. You can rely on us, Dinkin, said Arthur, apart from the no screaming part, obviously. Dinkin reached the back door and began to unlock the 9 different locks, bolts, and chains that he insisted his parents fitted on the door, then made his way nervously out into the garden. He immediately wished he hadn't left his illuminators in the loft. It was almost pitch dark and cold enough to make him shiver, even if he wasn't already trembling with fear. The moonlight made everything look 3.5 times more haunted than normal. In the distance, an owl hooted as if to say, "It's the end of everything." Dinkin crept slowly out into the middle of the lawn, then took the anti-everything code from his pocket and started to dig as the frightening things huddled behind him. "Who's got the flashlight? It's too dark to see," he said. "Someone turn on the light." The next moment, a bright light shone on the ground. "Thanks," said Dinkin. "Wasn't me," said Herbert. "Or me," said Arthur. "Well, I didn't do it," said Edgar. Suddenly, Dinkin caught a faint whiff of stale fish in the air. He turned around slowly, his eyes wide with terror. A massive shape loomed over the frightening things, its eyes burning like fire. "You okay, Dinkin? You look like you've seen a ghost," said Arthur. "K, began Dinkin. "Could you lend a hand?" "Can't believe we're doing this." "Cold, isn't it?" said Edgar, trying to guess what Dinkin wanted to say. "Clawfingers!" screamed Dinkin. The frightening things turned around. "Ah!" Standing on the lawn was the most terrifying creature they had ever seen. He was more terrifying than a dozen man-eating fishmen or a whole spaceship full of flesh-eating alien space zombies from beyond terror. The enormous creature was 100, hunched and malformed, and a tattered old coat hung off his body like loose skin. He wore a cardboard box as a mask, presumably because he was so terrifyingly monstrous, and his glowing eyes shone like lanterns through cut-out holes. He only had one arm, which ended in a foul, misshapen, 3-fingered claw. "Dinkin dings!" growled the Clawfingers, in a voice that sounded like nails scraping down a blackboard, at the same time that a cat was being strangled. He lifted his one arm and waved his hideous, misshapen claw. "Ruh, ruh, ruh," Dinkin began. "Run!" screamed the frightening things, scattering in all directions. Dinkin grabbed the code and ran after them. "Dinkin dings!" growled the Clawfingers again, lumbering after him and swinging his claw. Dinkin dashed back into the house, but by the time Herbert and Edgar had scrambled through the back door, Clawfingers was almost upon them. Dinkin tried to push the door shut, but Clawfingers lunged against it. "Help me!" cried Dinkin. "He's going to chop me into little pieces, or worse." Herbert and Edgar threw themselves at the door, but it was no good. Clawfingers forced his way inside and started swinging his claw around. "Ah!" screamed Dinkin and the frightening things. "Back to the fortress!" cried Dinkin. "It's our only chance!" As Dinkin and the frightening things raced out of the kitchen, Clawfingers lumbered around, swinging his claw into cupboards and chairs as he chased after them. "Dinkin Dings!" bellowed the claw-fingered creature. "There's no Dinkin Dings here. You've got the wrong house. Dinkin lives next door," squealed Dinkin as they raced towards the stairs. Unfortunately, Herbert tripped over his tail and crashed to the floor, narrowly missing Mr. Ding's cabinet of fishing trophies. "Herbert!" shouted Dinkin. He dragged Herbert to his feet just as Clawfingers lurched towards them. He was right on top of them. Clawfingers swung his claw again, missing Dinkin's head by a millimeter and smashing the cabinet into pieces. "Go, go, go!" Dinkin screamed, dragging Herbert with him as he scrambled past Clawfingers. They dashed up the stairs, with the creature shambling after them. Dinkin raced into his room and dived into the fortress. He waited for the frightening things to fly, scramble, and clatter their way in. Then he slammed the drawbridge shut and locked the door. "He'll skin us alive!" shouted Edgar. "He'll chop us into pieces!" cried Arthur. He'll... Actually, I can't think of anything worse than that," added Herbert. "Shh," said Dinkin. "He'll hear us." Everyone clamped their hands over their mouths and waited for what seemed like 24 seconds. It was only 22. Dinkin held his breath as the footsteps got closer and prayed that he would spontaneously explode rather than face the fury of Clawfingers. The light went on. Then he heard a knock at the drawbridge. "You in there, Dink?" Did Dad?" said Dinkin, opening the window incognito just a fraction. "What's going on? We can't sleep a wink with you making such an awful racket. Don't you think it's time you stopped messing around and went to bed?" "Dad, get Mom! Into the fortress, quick! Clawfingers is in the house!" "Who?" yawned Dinkin's mom as she shambled into his bedroom. Dinkin tried to explain, but neither of them were in any mood for silliness. "But Clawfingers is real. I saw him. So did the frightening things," said Dinkin from inside the fortress. Mr. and Mrs. Dings looked at each other. "Are the frightening things with you right now?" said Dinkin's mom, shaking her head. "Of course they are. They don't think I'd wander around the house at night on my own, do you?" said Dinkin frantically. "Fair point, I suppose," sighed Mr. Dings. "But will you please try and keep the noise down? Your mom and I are trying to sleep. It's not safe out there. Into the fortress, quick! The frightening things will budge up," said Dinkin. "Dink, you're being silly again. Super silly," said Mr. Dings. "Super duper silly," added Mrs. Dings. "Sillier than super silly, man. The silliest superhero in Sillytown," giggled Mr. Dings. Dinkin shook his head. What was it going to take for them to believe him? "Now, you may have the day off tomorrow, but some of us have to work on the weekend," said Dinkin's dad. "So let's have no more nonsense about this Clawfingers. It was way past all of our bedtimes." "Night, Dinkin. I'll leave the lights on and the door open just in case," said Mrs. Dings. "Oh, yes, brilliant idea. Leave the lights on. That should stop the bloodthirsty, claw-handed maniac," sighed Dinkin. Mr. Dings versus the fortress. Mr. Dings, 65% water, 18.5% carbon, 9.5% hydrogen, 7% smackdown. Fortress, 4% impenetrable, 96% cardboard. Dinkin didn't sleep a wink for the second night running. The thought of Clawfingers on the loose and with the anti-everything machine was almost too terrifying to contemplate. Did Clawfingers know about the anti-everything code? Had he heard Dinkin talking about it through the ceiling? If he got his claws on the code, he would almost certainly turn on the machine, and that would be that for everything. For now, the everything code was still safely in his pocket. But how long before Clawfingers found a way to get the code and bring Dinkin's nightmare to life? "Good luck today, Dinkin. Try not to get chopped into a million pieces," said Edgar, as the morning light shone through the window incognito. "Thanks," muttered Dinkin, as the frightening things began to fade. Within moments, they were gone. 6 seconds later, there was a knock on the top of the fortress. "Ah!" began Dinkin. "Dinkin, it's your father," said Dinkin's dad, in a much firmer voice than normal. "I've just seen the state of the kitchen, and the hall, and my fishing cabinet. I noticed you failed to mention last night that you'd smashed it to bits." "That wasn't me. That was Clawfingers." "I did try to explain, but you wouldn't listen," said Dinkin. "Clawfingers again? What did I tell you about using the C word in this house?" said Dinkin's dad, more sternly than Dinkin had ever heard him. "Now come out of that fortress at once." "Not a chance. I have to keep the anti-everything code safe. If Clawfingers gets it, he'll destroy everything. I really thought I'd explain this," said a frustrated Dinkin. "Dinkin Danger Dings, I am your father, and I insist you come out of there this second. I shall count to 3. 1, Dinkin heard his mother saying, "Oh, Mr. Dings, don't do anything rash." 2, said Dinkin's dad. "Oh dear," said Dinkin's mom. "Oh dear what?" said Dinkin. 3, cried Dinkin's dad, and ripped the drawbridge off its hinges like it was a piece of cardboard. Dinkin watched in horror as his dad pulled the roof off the fortress, then tore the walls to pieces with his bare hands. How was it possible? Was the fortress destabilized by intergalactic weather conditions? Was his dad, as he had often suspected, a super powerful mandroid from the year 10,012, with the ability to control all technology? Whatever the reason, it took under a minute for his dad to rip his fortress of complete and utter protection to shreds. Dinkin cowered amongst the wreckage of his not-so-impenetrable stronghold, completely defenseless against Clawfingers. "There, that's better. Now that you've got nowhere to hide, perhaps you'll realize that there's really nothing to be scared of," said Dinkin's dad, still fuming. "Now, I am going to spend my whole Saturday in the office because some of us have to work and can't just sit around all day panicking about everything." "Work?" said Dinkin, an idea hitting him like a runaway train, which also made him nervous about being hit by an actual runaway train. "You're going to work? I'd love to see where you work, Dad." "Really?" said Dinkin's dad, suddenly brightened up. "You want to see where I work?" "I do. I really, really do," said Dinkin, crossing his fingers. Of course, the thought of going anywhere near an office was so terrifying that it made Dinkin shake uncontrollably. But he knew that if he was going to protect the anti-everything code, sacrifices would have to be made. For he had seen the future, and it was terrifying. And we will stop right there for now. And until next time, have a great day.